How's the conference been? Good? Good? Anyone go to Dell World last week? Anyone? Anyone? Oh, that's a big success. What? Dell, what? Dell World, big, you've heard of Oracle World? It's our version of it. It was a rip-roaring success. You should come next year. One topic that was brought up almost unanimously in all sessions was the topic of security. It is front and center in the minds of many CIOs, many IT directors, the IT industry as a whole. That's all right. But before we get into that, first off, my name is Raj Patel. I'm Field Marketing Manager at Dell, focused on security. And I'd like to start off with a confession. I have been hacked. This phone right here was hacked. And I know exactly how it happened. I was sitting in a parking lot, connected to the Wi-Fi for the grocery store while my wife was in there getting some groceries. And the cyber criminal stole my credentials. Later that day, he used those credentials, logged my phone, and do his malicious thing. Luckily, he was caught, apprehended, prosecuted to the full extent of the law. The cyber criminal was my 4-year-old daughter. While sitting in the parking lot, she shoulder surfed me from her car seat, looked at the pin that I used, memorized it, and later that day, she unlocked my phone, put the pin in, and started playing Angry Birds. She was caught, and she did not get dessert that evening. So I have a bachelor's and a master's in electrical engineering and an MBA, all from the prestigious University of Texas at Austin. Come on. That's right. And I've been hacked by a 4-year-old. That is how easy it is to be hacked. Before we get into the doom and gloom of hacking attack vectors, let's start with some of the good things. So speaking of the phones, more and more organizations are allowing you to bring your own device and use those devices to do actual work. And I don't mean checking emails, that's basically table stakes at this point. I mean actual work. PowerPoints, Excel documents, downloading confidential information to your phone and having it be secure on your phone or your own personal laptop. Data continues to grow. There's going to be a growth of 50x by 2020 of the data stored on the world. Servers, clouds, storage arrays, endpoints, to a size of 40 zettabytes. Anyone know how many zeros are in a zettabyte? Anyone want to take a guess? No one? A lot, that's right, 21. 21 zeros, that's astonishing. And all this data is being driven by an influx of devices being connected to the internet. Refrigerators, washers, dryers, AC units, obviously phones and laptops, cars. By 2020, 28 billion devices will be connected to the internet. To put that in perspective, that's 4 devices for every single person alive. There's lots of great things going on in IT. With all this greatness comes a lot of headaches in trying to secure it because the infrastructure is getting massively more complex. And that means it's massively more difficult to secure it. And the bad guys are taking advantage of it. Last year, companies lost $80 billion a year due to a data breach. Over 552 million identities were exposed. Companies losing confidential data every day. And 70% of the time it's because someone just walks up to a laptop, pulls out the USB key, and then locks it. Spear phishing campaigns on the rise, zero-day vulnerabilities on the rise. And the security budget is roughly 10% of the total IT budget. And I think in this general market segment, it's probably even less, probably closer to 7-8%. Is that fair? Maybe less, roughly. And the methods that the cyber criminals are using to levy their attacks, drive these security systems, is vast. Last year we had lots of point-of-sale intrusions that made the headlines. Obviously Target, Home Depot. Web app attacks, as always, are high. Insider misuse, theft, loss, miscellaneous area, crimeware, including ransomware. Card scammers, denial of service, which is not zero literally, but it's low now. Cyber espionage, which just sounds cool. Fortunately for this audience, which it's largely all public, all local government, law enforcement, maybe some K-12 higher ed folks, yeah. Fortunately, 95% of the attack vectors levied against you guys falls into 4 categories. Web app attacks, insider misuse, theft, loss, and miscellaneous error. Miscellaneous error has to do with mailings, which the federal government does obviously a lot of. It's where recipient A gets information A, recipient B gets information C, recipient C gets information D. You get off by one, and the wrong people get the wrong data, and that's technically a data leak. And it's certainly information security, but it's not really cybersecurity, so I'm not going to spend any more time on it than that. But the other three, web app attacks, insider misuse, theft, loss, that's still over 70% of the attacks levied against you. That is certainly in the realm of cybersecurity. And we're going to deep dive into each of those. Excuse me. So we'll start with web app attacks. So silly question, who has a public-facing website? Everyone, right? Who here wrote the code for their public-facing website? Probably no one, right? Who here trusts the person that wrote the code with their job? Probably. Oh, one person. I'm guessing you wrote the code.
Nope.
Oh. Family member?
No.
So web app attack is just that. It's an attack on your website. And there are dozens of ways to make a web application, and there are dozens of ways to attack a web application. But what makes a web app attack unique from the rest of cybercrime is that web app attacks aren't done for financial gain. They don't care about how big the cash bag you have. They just do it for ideological or fun reasons. They don't believe something that you believe, or they're just, and they decide to pick on you that day. There is no real rhyme or reason to why they do what they do, which makes it kind of a scary proposition. And the way they attack is numerous and scalable, because like I said, there's numerous ways to make a web application. You have cross-site scripting, which is by and large the most used attack vector in this kind of attack. SQL injection, session management, information leakage, cross-site forgery, there's parameter tampering, and there's a whole host of others. Who here is certain your website is not good? Because 78% of all websites in the world have a vulnerability, and 1 in 8 have a critical vulnerability, which means it's something that's well known, that's been exploited in the past, something that's already has a patch for it, just that website hasn't patched it yet. I want to take a couple minutes now to just show how easy it is to launch one of these attacks, or how easy it is to have one of these vulnerabilities. So we'll start with the URL. Okay, in the good URL, you're calling a script db.php. You're passing a variable ID, a value of 0. In the bad, you're doing the same thing, except the value you're passing is 0, semicolon, delete users. It gets passed into the PHP code, where it constructs a SQL query. And the SQL query, in the good case, is you select all entries from the table users where ID equals 0, exactly what it's supposed to do. In the bad case, it does the same thing, but then it's in the second query of delete from users. And now your users table has been deleted. Now you might scoff at this and say, what blindingly stupid coder would write something this dumb? Confession number 2, this blindingly stupid, dumb coder has written code this dumb. Luckily it was for an internet site, there was no external connections, and we didn't have very many hackers on the payroll, so I got away with it, but I have written code that dumb, that blinding, that just completely blind to user input. Because when you're writing software code, I've been writing software code since I was in high school. Even today in my marketing role, which has nothing to do with software coding, I write it just for little side projects. I guess fun. But when you're writing code, most of your mental bandwidth is taken up with just getting your code to work and do what it's supposed to do. There's not much left over for extraneous things like making sure the user is doing what they're supposed to be doing. You're just concerned about doing what you're supposed to be doing. There's some real life damages. 2008, the Oklahoma Department of Corrections had their sexual offender registry hacked, and 10,500 records were breached. Constituted about $1 million in damages. This one was really dumb. Like in my previous example, it said ID equals 0. With these guys, instead of passing just variables, they would pass the entire SQL string. So all the hackers had to do was change the variables into asterisks, and then they got the whole data. Anyone from Oklahoma? If you're from Texas like I am, you don't like me. And I could make it really scary more. Recently, Oregon's employment database got hacked. A bunch of unemployment records, social security numbers, employment histories, were all made public. 850,000 records, $85 million in damages. The reason for that isn't known yet because it's so new, but I'm guessing cross-industry. I'm not sure. And this last one is my favorite. It's the smallest tackle, 878 records, $250,000 in damage, which in the grand scheme of data breaches, that's pennies. But this was done by an anonymous subgroup named Raptor Swag. And in typical anonymous fashion, they go to the internet, they post and brag about their exploits, talk about why they did it, how they did it. And this one's no different. Here's an excerpt from this one. An Ivy League school left their database open to literally one of the most simple web application vulnerabilities you can find. If that isn't reason enough to smack the bleep out of them, we don't know what is. For those of you who think this is harsh and uncalled for, we say do it. That is the mindset of the people who do web app attacks. He's not after financial gain. He's just bored. All right, insider misuse, also known as NCLGISA. So the typical timeline, on average, for an insider misuse case, you hire an employee, he works here for 5 years, happily plugging away at his job, no signs of discontent or malicious intent, and then something happens. Management takes him off, the system takes him off, whatever. And for 2.5 years, on average, he defrauds the company. And that's embezzling or leaking data to the competition, leaking data to his own personal account to use for later purposes. But he does it for 2.5 years before he's finally caught, fired, and then convicted 2 years later. Imagine how much data can be leaked in 2.5 years. And the threats, by and large, are not your staff. Technical insiders, the guys that are actually working in IT, are not the ones you need to worry about. The guys you got to worry about, the finance guys, the accounting guys, the engineers, the marketing guys, never, except for right now, trust that marketing guy. I had a previous employer, we had a situation where one of our guys he developed a relationship with one of our customers, and they were leaking data back and forth. Well, our guy leaked some highly sensitive data about the customer's competition, and that competition was also one of our competitors or customers. Obviously, the competition finds out that we are the source of the data leak. They come back to us and say, "Your $500 million toward the business, gone." We obviously had to do a serious amount of butt kissing to get that back, but that's how easy it is to lose, in this case, $2 billion a year run rate business. And again, that was a marketing guy that did that. Some other real life examples. Terry Childs, City of San Francisco, he shut down some key systems and he held all the passwords hostage so that the City of San Francisco was kind of in gridlock. And he refused to give the passwords up, all because he thought management was incompetent. Who here thinks that management's incompetent? Don't He was sentenced to 4 years in jail. Edrad Medical Associates had a radiologist who was fired. They didn't deprovision his account. He leaked 97,000 patient records, which results in $35 million in damages. I'm not sure what happened to the radiologist because this is kind of a private situation. I'm sure you've heard of Army Private First Class Bradley Manning, who leaked all the documents to WikiLeaks, sentenced to 35 years in prison. His name is now Chelsea Manning. I actually forgot about that tidbit of the story. And then, of course, is Edward Snowden, whose damages, we don't really even know how extensive his damages he's done so far, but we certainly don't know how much damage he's going to end up doing. So his prison sentence is going to be actually all right, theft loss, and this is literally just physical theft and loss of laptops, USB keys, hard drives, what have you. So a laptop is lost, stolen every 53 seconds. 15 times more likely than that, a laptop is just lost. 46% of these laptops contain confidential data, which drives the average cost of a laptop up from the, I don't know, what, $1,000 to $1,500 that a laptop actually costs to $50,000 nearly. And then I mentioned earlier that businesses, when they lose confidential data, 70% of the time it's because of the USB key as well. And where this happens predominantly is right under your nose, right in your own work area. The other one is personal vehicles. I've certainly had numerous friends who've had their cars broken into only to steal a Circa 2000 or a Circa 2000 iPod, and then their company laptop was stowed away under their seat. It happens. Real life damages: Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee lost 57 computers. That was a $1.5 million fine. That's a $1.5 million fine before you have to worry about bringing in consultants to tell you why it happened or how to fix it, and before you pay out remediation costs to everyone that was a victim. And the same thing with NASA. One laptop was stolen. That was 10,000 personnel records breached, $1 million taxpayer-funded remedy. Everything's more expensive with NASA. In Alaska Medicaid, one USB key was stolen. It had 500 patient medical records on it. That was a $1.7 million fine. So those are the various attack vectors that are going to give you headaches. Let's talk about some of the other headaches. First up is compliance. Who here is or trying to be PCI compliant? 2.0 or 3.0? 3? We went up from what, 2 evolving requirements to 20? Yeah. And it's what, 1 year of data logging, right? And then HIPAA. Anyone trying to keep up with HIPAA? 6 years of data logging. And now they can do random audits. Talk about pain, right? And the worst part is, just because you're compliant, it doesn't even mean you're secure. In fact, sometimes it gives you a false sense of security that, yes, I'm compliant, so I must be good. But in fact, you're largely not. Some other pain points: social engineering. So when hacking started back in, a long time ago, it was actually a good thing. It was a test to see. So back when you wrote software code on punch cards, the people who could write their code with the least amount of punch cards, they were the hackers, because they understood the interaction between software and hardware better than everyone else. It then turned into the more malicious term that we know now, where, again, people understand this interaction between software and hardware, but they do it for malicious reasons. Now hacking has evolved into hacking the human mind, and looking for exploits in how we think and how we feel to take advantage of us. Who here has ever got an email from a Nigerian oil prince claiming to have a $2 million bank account that he has to transfer to the US and he can't do it without your help, and for your troubles looking for $500,000, just English is horrible. Probably everything, right? Every time I put a Craigslist ad, even today, I get these emails. Well, even that has evolved. That old fish has now evolved into something far more sophisticated. There's one fish floating out there in the wild right now that claims it's from the WHO, the World Health Organization. And it says, more or less words, download the World Health Organization file for more information on how to stay safe from Ebola and other preventable diseases. We care. When you open this We Care document, you get infected with some malware, virus, or perhaps even ransomware, and you got to pay these guys money to block your computer. And then how phishing has evolved, spear phishing is continuing to evolve. Last year, some good stats. Spear phishing emails were down 28%, and recipients per spear phishing campaign were down 79%. Campaigns, however, were up 91%, and the average time per pitch was up 3x. So what does this mean? It means that the hackers or the cyber criminals are doing a lot more pre-work to identify the high-value targets. And then they foster the relationship for a much longer time to make sure that when they deliver the payload, it gets clicked. Their success rate is going up because of this. Just because their emails are going down, but they're being more successful. And for the public sector, this is a huge concern. The public sector is by far the biggest hit vertical by spear phishing. All right, some other pain points. Talk about compliance, social engineering. I'm guessing many of you don't have an in-house security team because you don't have the budget. I don't think anyone here is JP Morgan Chase, right? Without an in-house team, without budget, it's difficult to manage policies, it's difficult to do reporting and auditing. All that takes a lot of manpower, a lot of resources, and quite frankly, like I said, unless you're JP Morgan Chase, you probably don't have it. The reason I say JP Morgan Chase, they actually spent, I thought it was they dedicated 1,000 employees to security and $250 million a year, and they spent that. All right, so let's recap what we've talked about so far and some of the things that are harping on. So the web app attack, it really calls for the ability to know what's flying over your network, both going in and both going out. And a firewall obviously is a great solution for that. It also calls for making sure your web apps are up to date with the latest patches. So having a patch management solution would be great. Insider misuse, you need to be able to audit your privileged accounts. Who has access to the sensitive data? How long do they have it? Do they really need access to it? Maybe set up rolling passwords or auto resetting passwords so that you have to request access. Also talked about the need for a rollback. So when you have insider misuse, you can quickly roll back everything to the known good state. Theft law is quite simply, you just need, if you had your data encrypted, then unless the credentials got stolen as well, which is unlikely, the data on the laptop is largely useless, and the value of the laptop drops from that $50,000 number back to the actual cost of acquisition for the laptop. Social engineering, I mean, that's all about raising awareness with your employees. You have to train them repeatedly to be able to spot a phish and know not to click links. It's about training the mind. It's not about more hardware. Another pain points, reporting and auditing, compliance management, it would all be easier if you had a centrally managed solution that you can manage through one pane of glass and quickly see everything that you need to see. Now, to do all of this, you could go to our friends at Palo Alto for firewall. You could go to good old Microsoft for patch management, or Symantec for data encryption, or a whole number of people for identity access management. But then at the end of the day, you have this largely disparate security solution where every single solution requires its own person dedicated to run it efficiently, because they're all operating differently. They're all a different graphical interface. They all have different ways that they manage things. And that's not conducive to budget. That's not conducive to not having anything else. And it does really nothing for social engineering unless you want to call Deloitte and drop $1 million just to have them show up at your work. Wouldn't it be nice if you go to one place and get all of this? One PO, one salesperson, because dealing with salespeople isn't exactly the most pleasant experience. That one place, as you might imagine, is at Dell. So at Dell, we do things a little differently around security. We have a security policy centered around 3 pillars: protect, comply, and enable. Protect. We don't try to solve your antivirus problem or your firewall problem or your identity access management problem. We take a much more holistic view. We ask, what data do you have protected? Who has access to it? When do they have access to it? Why do they have access to it? How are they getting access to it? And 5 W's, why, when, whatever. By answering these more holistic questions, we're able to protect your network from the outside in and the inside out, both effectively and proactively. Second pillar, comply. When you have a data breach, the people that are affected, they don't care that you're PCI 2.0 or 3.0 compliant or that you're HIPAA compliant. All that they care is that their data's been exposed. Those celebrities who had their photos exposed on Apple, on iCloud, or whatever they call it, and on Snapchat, they don't care that Apple and Snapchat were in compliance. All that they care is that they've been exposed, that all of themselves have been exposed. And Dell, we take a similar philosophy. We don't craft security solutions to help you comply. We craft security solutions to protect your data. And furthermore, we craft security solutions that are easy to change and govern when your infrastructure changes, so you can keep protecting your data. Because when your data is protected, compliance is an afterthought. And lastly is enablement. We don't believe that a security solution should stand in the way of user productivity. More so than that, we believe security solutions should enable productivity. It should enable the enterprise to go out and adopt new technologies. If you want to go hook up to the cloud, the security solution should be there, ready to go, and not restrict you, but actually enable that access. It shouldn't stand in the way of users. If you have an encryption policy that slows the user's laptop down, the user's just going to figure out a way to get around it, and your stuff's not protected anyways. So I'm going to take a break from talking, cross my fingers that this works. Oh, there's no, are these speakers hooked up by chance? Oh, okay, we're going to try this. If it fails, we'll get to it. And, all right, what you would have seen is a 2.5-minute video from our Chief Security Officer. What you would have seen is a 2.5-minute presentation from our Chief Security Officer talking about protect, comply, and enable. And I will get there. A lot of slides this day. Okay, what you would have seen is our Chief Security Officer talking about protect, comply, enable, and how we built that out. And at this point, you might be wondering, like 5 years ago, Dell didn't really have a big play in the IT security space. We certainly didn't have anything in-house. And that's when Michael Dell took a look at the industry landscape and realized there was not a one-stop shop for security. He wanted Dell to be that. So he started a very aggressive merger and acquisition strategy. We started with the acquisition of Case, which gave us our Case patch management tool and endpoint security. And it required SecureWorks for the security consulting piece. And then SonicWall for firewalls, Quest for identity access management, finally Credent for its encryption technology. Now, one thing I want you to take away from this slide is look at the founding on dates. The youngest company here is 11 years old. The oldest is 27, which in software years is a dinosaur. All these companies have a ton of experience and bring vast expertise into Dell. And now through Dell, they're able to start connecting to one another. Now you could go to a whole host of companies and buy each of these individual pieces. I'm not going to argue that we offer something unique here that someone else doesn't. But what you get then is a disparate and fragmented security infrastructure where nothing is talking to each other, nothing is building on the presence of another one. But with Dell, you get things like your next-gen firewall can now detect encryption. So your firewall can detect the presence of encryption on any packets flying over the network. If it's encrypted, it lets it pass. If it's not, it kills the connection and discards the data. Our enterprise mobile management. Let's say you have this hip new web developer straight out of college who has an Apple and he has to have an Apple to do web development. Gosh darn it, if he doesn't have an Apple, he can't do web development. You can put a Windows 7 corporate image on his Apple. It will carve out a space on the hard drive, put in the Windows 7 corporate image. It'll be encrypted using our Credent technology. Access to and from it will be governed by our Quest access management. Access to and from the infrastructure or network will be governed by Quest. He can do his work while connected to the network. He can disconnect, still do work on the corporate image, and then when you reconnect, it syncs back up. It's like a client-side virtual machine that marries a lot of our security solutions into one nice package. Lastly, our SecureWorks team analyzes over 80 billion events a day. They find new malware, new viruses, new attack vectors every day. The Heartbleed and Bashbuck, they found the attack vectors, and they passed that information to our SonicWall team, who then implemented the attack vectors into our firewalls. Our firewalls were then patched, and if you had a SonicWall firewall, you were protected against Heartbleed and Bashbuck or anyone else because of this marriage between SecureWorks and SonicWall. So let's go back to this recap and see how Dell plays in this. So web app attacks, we have a SonicWall next-gen firewall with a built-in IPS and our Case patch management tool. Inside our issues, we talked about needing privileged account auditing and rollback. We have Quest software for that. And a cool story. So anyone been to Austin? Anyone? Great city. I love it. I've born and raised there my entire life, never left, probably never will. Traffic there is atrocious. I think it's like the #4 ranked worst traffic city in the US. And for a city the size of Austin, that's ridiculous. Hour-long commutes, totally commonplace. There's a local admin who had one of these hour-long commutes. He pulls in his driveway at 6 o'clock on a Friday. He gets an alert on his phone that says, Microsoft Active Directory has been modified, is now corrupt, all systems down. Of course, his boss gets the same alert. And he, by the way, cool point number one, he got that alert because he was a Dell mobile app AT. I guess not cool point, his boss also got the alert. Anyways, his boss obviously then calls him and says, go back to the office, fix this immediately. It's 6 o'clock on a Friday. His kid's soccer game's at 6:30. He just wants to have a beer and go hang out with his family. What would you do? I mean, I would argue that most everyone here would go back to the office, suck it up, and do it. Not this guy. He went to his Dell mobile IT app, clicked rollback, and the active directory reverted back to a previously known good state, and everything was fixed. And he went on to be father. So theft, loss, encryption, we have a pre-encryption solution for that. It only encrypts the files that need to be encrypted, all the business files, not the bank page files, which makes it operate very invisibly. Users report that they don't even know what's happening. Like I have encryption running on my laptop and I've never even noticed it. You know, the only reason I noticed this is that I turned the icons on just to see what is being encrypted for my own education. Social engineering training, SecureWorks can do it for you. They can come on site, train your employees how to spot a fish, how to know what links to click, what links not to click. And then 6 days later, 6 weeks later, 6 months later, they'll fish them. And any employee that takes the bait gets retrained. And then they get fished again. And then they get retrained, fished again. Until finally, they stop clicking the link. And that's really the only way some people learn. I mean, that's the only way a lot of people learn, is through repetition, smack, repetition, smack. And lastly, other pain points, needing a centrally managed solution. All of Dell solutions can be managed with a single pane of glass. All the dashboards for everything from identity access management to the SonicWall to Credent can all be looked at with one single pane of glass to see exactly what your network is doing, what the health of it is, all from one central location. That's down on the need for budgets, that's down on the need for an in-house team. And last little bit, I know many people aren't ready to completely revamp a security solution. They may not have a budget or time, or it may not be in the, it may not be upcoming in the life cycle of their products. One thing I would implore is to at least protect your perimeter. And our SecureWorks team is excellent at that. They will monitor your network 24/7, and anytime there's an attack, they'll shut down the attack, and they will call you and they'll work through steps to remediate in the future. They can also come in and audit, so they can show you where your weak points really are, what you need to concentrate on first. I mean, who here knows they need a security solution? Probably everyone. Who here knows what the next step is? It gets a little fuzzy then, right? SecureWorks can help you plan that out, assess what you have, where your weak points are, and what you need to do first. So that is it. One more thing I want to bring up. There's a couple of webcasts coming up. The first is done by IDC's, one of their research scientists on security, and our chief security officer, John Bird, talking about the human side of IT security. And that's actually tomorrow. So if anyone's interested, drop me a business card, or I'll get your email and I can send you the link to register for this. And then next week, Thursday, we're doing a K2000 FAQ session, more or less. The new interface, how it looks exactly like the K1000, which is pretty common to a lot of our products. And it basically just gives you an overview on the K2000. So if anyone's interested in those, please drop me your business card or an email, and I'll get you the info on those. So that's all. What questions we got? Silence. That's good and bad. Okay, if you got any questions, I have business cards to give out. Feel free to reach out to me. I didn't put my Twitter on. But yeah, thank you all for attending. Thanks for coming to this session, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
You can save your time because they're mine.
Well, that's the 4-year-old hack.